how do you know what facilitator is right for you? Because here's the thing, everybody's not for everybody, right? There's teachers that didn't resonate for you. There's relationships and ex-partners that didn't resonate for you. So of course, there's going to be facilitators, plant medicines, master teachers that don't vibe for you either. So as we go through today, I really encourage you to have a pen, a pad, and if you've never worked with psychedelics before, or whether you have, I want you to consider this context with any kind of teaching or coaching, not just psychedelic spaces, but anyone you are exploring or you're deciding if you're going to lean in for their support in your transformational processes, because this all translate the same. And so whether it's for your personal processes, your financial processes, your spiritual processes, these are the kind of questions you might want to consider before you hand over your credit card, your bread, your time, your love to another person. And it's not about there being a right answer. And that's what I'm going to talk about. It's about finding how it feels in your body and taking radical self responsibility for it. Because at the end of the day, if we don't empower people to ask more questions, if we don't empower people to know what to explore and what questions matter to them, the likelihood of harm is exponentially higher. And so, my hope for you in the class today is that if you are seeking a facilitator, coach, or guide, that you're going to be able to have more clarity around what mission, values, things are important to you. If you're already a medicine carrier, a facilitator, or a coach, that you're going to know how you would answer these questions if someone asked them to you. I'm seeing a lot of things in the psychedelic space that don't delight and excite me, and so I've decided to do something about it. So that is my kickoff for today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Cole Whitty, co-founder of the Condor Approach, co-host of the Psychedelic Coach podcast. We're really about helping you to know how to go from intake to integration. And we're going to talk about the 4 INS process, which is this framework that's going to help you just do a check-in on who you decide to work with. Do they have a template or framework? And you can use ours to kind of match up to help you feel safe, connected, and fulfilled. So that's what today's show is all about. For those of you that don't know the Condor Approach, we have an education side and then we have a coaching program. But we teach coaching in all of it, because if you don't learn how to coach yourself, and all those same methodologies go outward, but we talk about building the foundational aspect of yourself, of your life, of your business, which is always you. So I'm excited for today's class. For those that might be new to me, I'm going to give you the 2-minute clip note, because it's like, who is this chick? Like, who does she think she is to be sharing these kinds of things in a concise manner? At least my healing journey, my shamanic journey in the psychedelic space started after a trip to Disneyland, where I sat down on the ground and I started to cry. I was in so much physical pain, I couldn't take another step. And I saw the irony, one of those moments when you see yourself outside of yourself, and the irony of being at the happiest place on earth with family in like the worst place you've ever been, emotionally, physically, mentally. And I chose in that moment to change everything, which in changing my diet and lifestyle, I lost 50 pounds. About 60% of my symptoms went away from inflammation, fibromyalgia. I also had endometriosis, 20 something broken bones, 3 traumatic brain injuries. I could go on and on. There's lots of podcasts on it. If I had more time, well, I wouldn't ever have enough time for the whole story. But to give you context for today of how we started to get into this work, I started my personal journey 15 years ago, when after changing my diet and lifestyle, when doctors said you should be healthy, everything looks good on paper, but it wasn't. Fibromyalgia and endometriosis alone, migraines, right? And so this is what led me to do deeper exploration. After I had changed everything I could control, I had to take a look more internally. And this is when I started to see inflammation and diet lifestyle. When I changed all that, about 60% of my symptoms resolved. But that other 40% was trauma. And we could argue that the 60% of diet and lifestyle choices and inflammation was also from trauma. But all of that to say, it got me on my own healing journey. And then I married the amazing Tawwidi, registered nurse of 31 years, 23 clinical in emergency rooms. And this all coalesced into everything makes perfect sense why we do what we do. And I'll tell you more about that another time. But today, I've worked with facilitators all over the world, South America, Asia, Israel, all over the place, coaches, plant medicine guides, you name it, right? And so throughout this process, I started to see the difference in the teaching styles. And so part of why going through this process with you today, helping you delineate and decide what questions matter to you, what questions you would want to ask, is going to help you find safe spaces for certain processes because everyone can be your teacher. Darth Vader could be your teacher. Yoda could be your teacher. Tony Robbins could be your teacher. Abraham Hicks could be your teacher. So it comes down to what process are you in? Am I going to go to Oprah for relationship advice? Probably not. Am I going to go to Tony Robbins for women's health advice? Probably not. Do they all probably have a perspective that's valuable? Sure. But when it comes to who I want to choose for what process, this is where taking radical self-responsibility for where you are, where you want to go, and what this person's skill set is and how you kind of feel in response to how they answer your questions. So that is where we're going for today. Let me bring up my presentation here, my little slide situation. Take a nice deep breath because we are going in. Move my little screens. All right, fam. So who is the right facilitator for you or for me? That's the whole point of today's class. Now, the premise of where I like to start, we have something called the 4 ins process, which if I had more time, I'd go into today, but we cover it at the Condor Approach Live. So I'm going to do a top-down overview because this is the structure of how we set up all of our client work when we were full-time facilitators, when we're coaching, our live events, our retreats, everything follows this 4-part framework to working with us. There's the intake process, the intention process, the in-space process, and the integration. 4 parts: intake, intention, in-space, integration. 4 ins. And so what makes this so valuable is in transformative journeys, preparation and intentionality are key to unlocking the potential of master teachers. When I say master teachers, I'm talking about in plant, animal, fungi, human form, chemical form. So whether you're going to a yoga training, whether you're going to an ayahuasca retreat, what is their 4 ins process? What's their intake process? What's their intention setting process? In the space is the experience itself. What is the integration process? So that's, take a screenshot of it, take a picture of it, whatever you want to do. What each of these 4 parts, how is that in their process with you or the journey they want to take you on, no matter what kind of journey it is. So how does this impact who you choose, this questioning process or this evaluation process? Well, when you have a 4 ins, an intake, an intention, in space, and integration, it's going to optimize the effects. So it's going to make your breakthroughs probably last longer or your breakdowns not last so long. It's going to empower you for your own growth and promote continuous evolution because you go, oh, intake, intention, in space, integration, intake, intention, in space, integration. This is a cycle that's always happening anyway. But when you do it consciously and intentionally, it impacts the effects. So the intake process is what we're going to mostly talk about today. And I'm going to show you how in that form, you can ask them questions based on the 4 ins. What's their intake process? What's their intention setting process? What is their in space process? And what's their integration process? So the intake process isn't just for the facilitator or the guide or the breathwork coach. It's for you, the participant. The intake is to take in information, for you to take in information from them, for them to take in information for you. It starts with the participant that is seeking the support. So when we can come back to radical responsibility for ourselves, this is where we're going to find greater depths of outcome. Because especially if you're leaving a religion or a patriarchal system where you've been conditioned to have a guru, to have someone to turn to have someone to follow, we can actually displace that energy or transfer that energy to the psychedelic coach or the psychedelic guide or the ayahuasquero. And it's important to understand that in our training, we talk about constructs and how to more readily identify what's driving you to do what you do. But today we want to start with you can explore those things in the space with facilitators. I want you to be armed with what questions matter to you. So before we go into what questions to ask, we have to distinguish the difference between expectations and anticipations. You may have heard from a psychedelic coach or a guide in the past, like, well, if you're going to do psychedelics or plant medicine, you don't want to have expectations. But what I've seen happen is in fear of having expectations, people don't ask questions, or the facilitator says, well, no, it's best if you don't expect anything. But what happens then is our mind, especially if we've had circumstances in the past where there was harm, loss, deficit, injury, pain, even death, our mind needs more context in order to feel safe. And so I'm going to break down the difference between expectation and anticipation. Then we're going to go into the questions. Now, remember, as I go through this process and get to the questions portion, I want to make sure that you are writing down questions that come to mind for you. But let's start with a little more context before the difference between expectation and anticipation. So an expectation is a rigid assumption about how a psychedelic journey should be. They limit openness and can lead to disappointment or resistance. Here's an example. Someone came on, in fact, one of our clients came on a trip to Peru that we went on about 2 years ago. And on this trip to Peru, most of the participants said, I don't have any expectations. I want to work with the Hunikuin tribe, who is who we were sitting with. We actually fly them out of the jungle to us. And in night one, everyone said, I don't have expectations. And in the morning of day 2, there were so many people that were angry and upset and frustrated. Why? Because that night had been a very light experience, and they didn't know that it was going to be a light experience on the first night until the curandera or the ayahuasquera or the paige, Marley Tume, came back and she said, I took you light last night because I need to meet you. I'm here with my children because she facilitates with her kids. I'm here with my children, so I need to meet you first and see if I feel safe with you to guide you into the realms. And so people were disappointed. The second you have disappointment, you already know there's expectations. And so I invite, whether you're a coach, a healer, facilitator, to understand that we do have expectations. Instead of saying, don't have expectations, let's have conversation around what the expectations could be, understand ourselves a little bit more, and help someone to know what to anticipate. So what's anticipations? Anticipations are open-minded and flexible. They involve curiosity and readiness for the journey. So the questions I'm going to walk you through today are what you can anticipate from an experience, not what you can expect. Now, there will be parts of every coaching container or psychedelic journey. There's parts you can expect. There's parts you can anticipate. And as someone that's been in the space for a long time, as someone who had a full-time career as a facilitator, built 7-figure top line, I can speak very confidently in this space that when you, as from the facilitator side, when you can answer all of these questions, you're going to create a greater level of safety for the participants. So helping or knowing what to anticipate supports safety. We are built, and because of traumas and dramas, Someone that is very controlling is often like that because they had moments when they were out of control. And so by helping guide someone through what they can anticipate is going to support safety because they're going to feel more like you've got them covered. And if you're a participant looking for a coach and someone will not answer your questions, how do you feel about that? How well do they manage it? So as I mentioned before, we've got this 4 ins process. Intake, ingestion, nice. Intake, intention, in space, integration. What is their intake process? And I'm going to give you questions to ask. What's their intention setting process? What's the in space? And what's the integration? It's not about there being right answers or wrong answers. I want you to listen with your whole body when you connect with someone. If you're talking on the phone, me personally, I prefer both as a facilitator coach and participant to first connect on a phone call, not on a Zoom call. As someone that works with Zoom for a job, there's a code switching or a changing or a chameleon energy in front of a camera that turns me on because I have a professional persona in front of a camera. And if I'm connecting with someone for a more intimate process, if we talk on the phone, I can pace, I can move, and I can fully listen without having to kind of hold myself together because my unconscious awareness is that I'm being watched. So that can be a lot for someone. For me personally, I prefer to meet someone on the phone first, not video. So listen with your whole body. Prioritize safety and intention when embarking on a psychedelic journey. It's essential to ask questions, do research, and trust your instincts. An open heart and curiosity are key to a transformative experience. And I want you to write any other questions as I go along that are important to you. Now, I've got this awesome document. Is that my last slide? I think so. Yes. I have this awesome document called Finding Your Facilitator. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull it up here. I have this QR code here on the screen, so you could take a screenshot and then use it on another computer later. Ta-da! But this is actually going to download the Facilitator Questionnaire for you. So if you're watching this on a computer, you can just screenshot it with your phone or click that QR code with your phone. So this is Finding Your Facilitator Questionnaire, questions to ask. And again, to simplify, embarking on a psychedelic journey can be transformative, but it's crucial to prioritize safety and approach it with intention and an open heart. This means asking questions, doing research, and trusting your instincts and your intuition. If you go into a circle and some part of you wants to run, personally, I say, if you're first talking to someone and you feel that sense to run, some part of you doesn't feel safe. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the facilitator or the circle or container. I like to err on the side of follow your body's reaction first, get to safety, and then feel into what the perceived threat may be. There are times that someone pushes on your edges and it makes you uncomfortable, but you trust them and feel safe with them, and you feel like you could trust them to guide you. Other times, you'll have someone come that is reflective of old life circumstances, and this person their energy may be like your father's was, like your coach's was. And though that has a healing place, you get to decide how you want to learn your lessons. If it's someone that there's a lot of pushback and it's kicking up your rebellion vibes or your retreat vibes, and they aren't really able to support you, nurture you, or be more inclusive in your process, you just may not want to heal that part that way. So, example, my first ceremony was with a male bodied person, very strong masculine presence that made me very uncomfortable because of all of his training, both shamanically, medically, in every way. And the fact that I could see him reading my body language made me really uncomfortable. My body wanted to run, but I had already done such a clear intake process. I was there with friends that I trusted implicitly. And so I trusted them I trusted my friends for support. I trusted him to guide me, and I trusted my body to keep my distance, all at the same time, which is why it's important to never give your power away. In psychedelic spaces, I prefer, instead of using the word surrender, that I trust myself to be guided. I never surrender, as in to give my power away. Now, there are varying descriptions of what surrender actually means, like to lay down any weapons. But so many people that have been through traumas, the flavors that I have, to surrender um, has actually been dangerous, traumatic. And I have learned to never give my power away. And so the term surrender was not cohesive to allow that in my model of the world. And so by telling myself, I trust myself to be guided, I'll follow you, I won't give you my power. So that context may work for you. It might not. Surrender might work for you. Fantastic. Just something to consider. So, to guide your journey effectively, we recommend setting an intention. An intention for us is, what do you want to know? What do you want to do? Who would you like to be? Or what would you like to understand? Right? Intake, intention, in space, integration. So they give your journey purpose and direction. Even a simple desire to experience something new is a valid intention. So if you're going down to the jungle, your intention might be to experience the indigenous practices in the cultural setting where they happen. It's a great intention. Beautiful. Even going in and saying, I don't have an intention, I just want to explore what this experience is like, sounds like a great intention. So, by having an intention for yourself, you start to create a framework for your experience that aligns with your goals and values. I like to say, here's my intention, and I'm open to God's source, the universe, or other information I'm not aware of yet to change my intention. This is, again, the difference between expectation and anticipation. I set an intention, I don't expect to hit it in this moment. I will say, though, every intention I have ever set came in time. When I let go of the expectation it would be in that journey. Sometimes it took years later before I actualized the results of that journey. So, whole other conversation for whole other trainings. So, at the end of the day, y'all, prioritizing your safety is the most important part, and having these questions can help you prepare for a journey. So, questions to ask. Take a screenshot if you want. If there's some that really stand out or one you would like to add, feel free to add it below. How long have you been a shaman or facilitator? How many ceremonies have you participated in? And how many have you conducted? Who was your teacher? Or what lineage were you taught through? Where did you learn? Or where did you study? Right? I'm doing an intake process on the guide. Once again, and I'm going to say this over and over throughout this process, there's not a right or wrong answer here, folks. It's who is correct for you. How do you feel when they answer your questions or when they refuse to answer your questions? How do you feel listening with your whole body? What is the duration? Is it overnight or in the daytime? How long can I anticipate being there? How long might the journey last? What is included in the experience? Where will it take place? What type of building or environment? So now, if you remember, I said intake, intention, in space. I want to ask questions about what is the set and setting like for my experience. Do I want to bring layers? What kind of clothing should I wear, right? Or should. I try to avoid the word, but sometimes it's the most appropriate word. Should I wear loose fitting clothing? These are the kinds of things you want to know, because if you're going to a ceremony, you might go there wearing very restrictive clothing. And as someone that's done that before, in the ceremony itself, if you feel restricted in clothing, you want to take them all off, which may or may not be the container for that. So, what type of building or environment? What is the dieta or diet protocol leading up to the journey? What do you recommend as far as setting an intention before the ceremony? What's your integration process? Can I contact you after the ceremony if I have questions regarding my experience or need support. Do not be reluctant to ask questions, y'all. And some facilitators, some shamans, some coaches will give you pushback for asking these kinds of questions because they don't want you to have expectations. My whole rule of thumb is I understand when a facilitator doesn't want me to have expectations. There was a time when I had attended a journey myself that I was asking him questions. And I said, in fact, I'll tell you when I get to it. But so pause. I'm going to go through this and then I'll talk through it through a story to kind of pull it all together. How do you recommend I prepare for the experience? You want to know medical conditions and medications. And if someone doesn't ask, I would run immediately. If they don't at least ask that question, that is, I'd be gone. What can I anticipate? What are some things I can consider or prepare for? What if I feel unsafe? What do you do to keep the environment safe? What substances will I be taking? Can you share what dose you'll give me when you give it to me or after? How do you determine your doses? Will people be taking different substances or is everyone taking the same? Have you ever taken what I'll be taking? What was your experience with it? Is it okay for people to take substances they bring from outside? Where do you source your substances? Will someone with a medical background be present? What if I'm afraid and I want to leave? What happens? How many people will be there participating? How many will be there helping? What's your privacy policy and confidentiality? So, all of these questions to kind of like pull it into a story, because you may be a coach or a shaman or medicine carrier watching, being like, oh, but I don't want people to have expectations and I don't tell people doses for that reason and this reason. And I hear you. Let me walk you through a story to pull all of this together into why it matters. So, I was going on a psychedelic journey. And when I was talking to the facilitator, I told them, well, how much are you giving me? And he said, well, why are you asking? And I said, well, because in the past, I ended up in a coma, folks, from a contaminated batch of GHB that we're talking 20 something years ago. And so in my world, I want to know what's in things because of that experience. Because I trusted someone, I trusted people to say, yeah, you can take that and you'll be safe. And that wasn't true. I almost died. I flatlined. I was found unconscious in a bathroom. And so, where this facilitator did something incredibly well and boosted safety for me is he didn't say, oh, I don't tell you the amount. He said, what has you ask that? Like, why do you want to know? And when I shared my story, he goes, that makes a lot of sense. So I see why you would want to know that. But I've got to tell you, in my experience, when I tell someone dosages, they can attach to the amount. And if they have a good experience, it's because of the amount. Or if they have a bad experience, it's because of the amount. And so when he said, I will tell you how much I give you tomorrow after the ceremony, would that be okay with you? And I said, yes, that works. Because he, especially with something like mushrooms, if you have the mushroom and it was, say, 2 grams, and it was a really deep experience and felt overwhelming, then you could attach to the idea that 2 grams of mushrooms was too much, when really it doesn't work that way. You could take 1 gram and have as deep of an experience as 3 or 4, depending on the species, the timing, what you were going through. There's other set and setting, your mindset, physical set, spiritual set, financial set. There's all these sets in the impact, the setting of where it takes place. And so by him asking more questions, that helped me to feel safe, because that let me know he was willing to include my perspective into his cosmology and understand me a little bit deeper. So that made a huge impact on me feeling safe. And so if you're a facilitator or guide, ask more questions. And if you're sitting with someone and they go, no, I'm not going to tell you that. Cool. It's their house, their rules. How do you feel about someone who isn't willing to hear your voice? If you're working on being heard and you've got someone that's putting up a wall, they're kind of refusing your voice already. So if the shit hits the fan, if you have a very challenging ceremony, is that going to be the person who will support you in a very vulnerable process? And then from a coach guide perspective, here's how, when I get on the phone with someone to do an intake process. So intake, intention, in space, integration. Intake is when we get on and connect initially before we work together. Intention is, what do I want to know, do, be, or understand from us either working together or in the ceremony itself. In space is the experience itself. Integration are the actions as a result of the experience. We say integration is not optional, but how you integrate is. And when you bring intentionality to integration, this is the difference of lasting impact. This is the difference of breakthroughs that last. This is the difference between breakdowns not lasting longer than necessary. But it starts in the intake process. So for me, if someone doesn't put the time and energy on the front end, I can guarantee you they're not going to give you the time on the back end. So when I say there's not a right or wrong answer, this is what I mean. And then when it comes to privacy and confidentiality, most, like 99.9% of circles that are being performed, whether they call themselves a church or not, are not being done legally. They have defensible cases in court if they get in trouble, but they do not have the DEA required sign off that, yes, you are clear to do this. Okay. And I think that people need to know that difference, because a lot of times someone's going in unknowingly to a circle and they're like, we're a church, so it's legal. No, it's defensible in court. Okay. So know that privacy and confidentiality, if I go to a circle and I am out in public and I hear someone say, oh, yeah, Steven said he saw you last weekend at the Journey. He told me about it. I don't feel safe. So I want to know, what's their privacy policy and their confidentiality? Because in our circles, we always said, this stays here. This is no one, like, you are not to speak about anyone else outside of the container from this experience. That's their information. That's their stuff. So if I see that kind of stuff happening, and I see it in Austin a lot, some other very private experience, and I immediately won't work with that group, with that community, because they don't have a tight privacy confidentiality situation. So let me walk through. Let's take a deep breath there. Exhale. So I'm going to walk you through, if we were on a call together, I want to give you, in fact, I'm going to stop this share for a minute. Again, if you want the code to this, so you can take a screenshot of this facilitator questionnaire. There's the QR code to it. Yes. Now I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to walk you through what it can look like when I'm on a call with someone. I'm going to give you the very, 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 very condensed version. And in the weeks coming, I'll do another one of these on our intake process, because our intake process is two-part. We have an exploration call and we have a deeper dive expansion call. The initial intake call is to see if we're a fit for each other. We get to know each other. We ask these kinds of questions. I have questions for you. You have questions for me. If we both consent to moving forward, then I send you the payment link, the deeper dive form, and our deep dive form is 30-something pages, okay? Because I want to know from pretty much your birth story to now as much information as possible, cultural considerations, gender dynamics, religious background, first time or like first generation immigrant, or are you an immigrant? The language that was spoken when you were a baby. Because in my intake process, I want to know your past, because I can tell by someone's intake form. I know what to anticipate from their experience, not what's going to happen during their journey, but I do know the potentials on the other side of their journey, of the meaning making they could have, regardless of what actually transpires. And so from a coaching perspective, as a psychedelic coach, as a facilitator, when we get on a call, the first thing I want to do is declare my safety, my policies, my confidentiality to you. I want to say, all right, my first priority is your safety. If at any point you want to pause, pull back, You don't want to answer the question. You are welcome to just let me know at any time, pause, or I don't want to answer that. And then if I'm explaining for a retreat example, for example, of what to anticipate, I'm trying to not go too deep into my intake process because that's not class. If I'm talking about what to anticipate, here's how I talk about it so that you don't create expectations, though you will anyway. So you can anticipate that we're going to start at 1 p.m. From 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., we're going to do a workshop. And in that workshop, we're going to talk about how to prepare. We're going to talk about body mapping, things to anticipate within the journey. We're going to talk about skills. We're going to, whatever our little lesson is, I like to usually have a framework for the weekend. And then at about 4:30, you can anticipate that we're going to take about a 30-minute break, have you go outside, get some air, relax. And then you can anticipate that we're going to come back in around 5 p.m. to begin the opening circle. The opening circle is going to take us about an hour to an hour and a half with this amount of people. You can anticipate that by 6 o'clock, 6:30, we're going to begin the experience. You can anticipate that within that first hour, most of the people will begin to drop into the experience. And that can feel like this, sound like this, whatever, whatever. If at any point you feel like the room is too much, too loud, or energetically you need space, I want to let you know that in our circles, everything is welcome. After we do the terms of engagement, there are rules and boundaries and things like that. If you need a quieter space, all you have to do is let me know, and you can expect that I will find a safe space for you, a nice little nest to ensure that you feel safe. At around 9 o'clock, whatever timing, I'm just making this up on the fly. Around 8 o'clock, we'll have the opportunity for you to go a little bit deeper if it resonates for you, or you may choose to stay exactly where you are. From that process, at about 11:30, you can anticipate we're going to start to put out food for the people that are ready to start to eat a little bit. You can anticipate that many people will be up till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. In the morning, you can anticipate we're going to start breakfast at 9 o'clock. We're going to finish at 10 o'clock and start our closing circle. That closing circle, we're going to go until noon, and you can expect that we will have you out of there by 1 p.m. So, can you all see the difference between helping someone to know what to anticipate versus expectations? I can't tell someone they're going to have a beautiful journey. I know that all journeys are beautiful because of my 15 years of experience, but there's beauty in the breakdown. It's not all easy. And so I'm not going to tell someone like, oh, well, even if you have a challenging or there's no such thing as a bad trip. Like, to me, those aren't useful thoughts to inject into someone's experience. I want to help bring as much ease to them as I can. And I can do that by giving them an idea of what to anticipate, not what to expect. And so, just like with those questions I brought up, y'all, some of the questions people don't consider, if you're a very empathetic person, being in a large group may not be for you. I did not know that for myself, but it made sense in retrospect after, I don't know, 4 years into it when I learned the lesson that in psychedelic spaces, I was pulling in other people's energy to transmute. It wasn't just like me trying to save or rescue. Part of my shamanic gifts is I can actually help people transmute and release when they can't the cost of my physical body. And so I to point that I recognized just because I can doesn't mean I should. That I could purge for people, feel the pain of people, pull a headache from someone, and I could actually release it, but at what cost? And so in being in larger groups, now if I'm doing one-on-one, which I don't right now, but in facilitating one-on-one, that may be something I choose to work with someone, but I charge a lot more for that because it could take me a week of needing support, body work, IVs, vitamin infusions to get my body strong again. So I'm not willing to do that uh, just because I can't. And for some people, I will at times, but that's super rare now because most people also need to learn that skill. And at other times, it did feel like this was a part of my path was to help them transmute it together because it was such a heavy thing. And so I can lift it for you for that period of time so that we could get to the work so you could get stronger. But overall, Me being in a large container, I spend so much energy protecting myself that I'm just tired for days after that. It's not like a relaxed position to kind of shield myself for 24 hours, 48 hours. And so smaller containers are much better for me. And again, doesn't mean I can't be in a large one, but I reached a point that I said, but why? What am I trying to prove by being here? If I know that I could have an experience and come out with energy or recovery is very easy versus feeling like I got hit by a truck. It's not only mineral depletion in some journeys, it's the people that were either pulling your energy or you were processing theirs. So if you know that you're empathetic, knowing how many people are going to be at that journey might matter to you. Or even if it's a larger journey, is there at least a place that you can go have alone space that's at least 15 feet, 30 feet from anyone else to cocoon, protect, cleanse, get rid of that type of energy? And that's why I'm passionate about not that they're being the right questions or the wrong questions. It's that what's important to you. You are a collaborator with God, source, universe. And by taking responsibility of what would make it ideal for you, what things would you like to bring? I've had people that I encourage to bring their own music because of their, say, very Christian background. Some of the shamanic Icaros felt so dark to them. It was too many new things at once. And by them bringing music that they could listen to, we were helping to titrate and start to increase their capacity. Because when you put someone in the jungle, that can be destabilizing if they're afraid of bugs. Then you're giving them a psychedelic brew, which, if they have fear of losing control and they've never been out in the jungle like this, that can be a double destabilizing process. And so it's like if you keep adding all these things, there might be a way as a facilitator or coach, I can give you a little bit of support. And in time, then I encourage people to listen to the Icaros and the music because that's part of it too. And so this is where you get to decide who your teachers are. You get to decide what kind of learning, what kind of guide. Do you want someone that's very strict? Maybe you need that in your life right now, is someone that's got very solid boundaries. Or maybe what you would benefit from is someone that's more nurturing. The difference in ayahuasca circles from a male led or a female led or a family led or a partnership led are all very different. Goddess Jocelyn also just posted having anchors. You know, absolutely. If you have an altar, you can bring an altar, just keep it closed. Like you can wrap it all closed. As a general rule, and this is a totally different conversation, but oftentimes you can bring something to place on the altar. You can have something to have in your hands. Sometimes if there's a totem, a rock, a toy, something small to help remind you who you are and that this is an experience can be very, very valuable. And so knowing what to anticipate and asking questions from these facilitators, from these guides, and listen with your body. If you've been learning the hard way, if you've had very harsh teachers your whole life, what if you didn't have to learn that way anymore? What if your opportunity was to learn through support, through nurturing, through a gentler, softer approach? Because you're great at hard things. You've mastered traumatic navigation, but know that you don't have to continue learning that way. And so that's really our session for today, y'all. Like that's really what I came to kind of cover and want to instill, impart, and share is because one, we have to, or I choose to empower more people as much as possible to maintain that radical self responsibility. That it is challenging to do the work, but when you will take on responsibility for your safety first, when you will ask the questions, then you can find the person that is supportive to you. I know that I'm done learning with pain, learning from pain as my mentor. Pain can be a powerful teacher. And it was for a long time for me. But what actually became is pain became my guru. Pain became the one that I went to to learn. And that overdevelopment of pain had anchored to pleasure, so I also couldn't experience pleasure without pain. In my uncoupling, in doing work on these two things separately, it doesn't mean that I just get rid of pain forever. It means that now I understand pain as a teacher, but that it doesn't have to be my main teacher. And the teacher I decided to explore more was pleasure and peace and kindness and consideration. So this is what I hope really illuminates for y'all today is this opportunity. And so whether you've been to one of our live events before, whether you haven't, we're not even scratching the surface of why all this stuff matters. And by investing one time in one of our live events, the $1,000 before you go pay for a retreat, before you go down to the jungle, you will get so much more out of the experience by one, making sure it's the right fit for you. Two, making sure that you know how to prepare yourself, what things matter to you. Intake, intention, in space, integration. Where are you now? Your intake process. Where do you want to go? Intention. What do you want to know, do, be, or understand? When you enter the space, if you end up in a challenging place or position, what do you do? How can you handle it? What does support look like? And then in integration, this is where you take the actions, the journey, the in space, whether it's a breathwork session, a therapy session. What you take from the in space and how you apply it is all of the difference in the world for where you want to go, the relationships that you want to have, the impact that you want to have. That's why we say integration is not optional, but how you integrate is. The Condor Approach is not only a framework for psychedelics, it's a framework for integration. We have not learned how to integrate. We have not learned how, after a car accident or having a baby or leaving a relationship or leaving a job, what happens when there's a part of you that disintegrates. There's an identity that dies. There is a ego death with many of life's circumstances. So how do you integrate that? How do you integrate a cancer diagnosis? How do you integrate there's not cancer anymore? All of these are disintegrating circumstances, transformational processes. But when you have support, when you have community, when you have systems and frameworks, you can kind of have bumpers to the bowling alley of your life and get a lot more strikes. And as you get more attuned to those strikes and the feeling of getting to where you want to go, you don't need the bumpers anymore. You don't think about the framework anymore. You know how to work with the skills and the tools to get to where you want to go. So if you're not already registered, fam, for the Condor Approach in February, it's $997, 3 full days. So we've got like 30 hours of information delivered live in person. There is the option to tune in virtually, unless it's the only way you can make it happen. Come live. Because to watch is not the same as to be deeply immersed in community. You can't learn nervous system regulation alone. Some of it. But in order to truly feel safe with other people, you need other people. And this is an environment of people that want you to be you, want you to win. And that level of safety allows you to go to deeper places than many people have even reached in psychedelic spaces because they didn't know they had never felt safe. Safety isn't something we tell you we create. Safety is what my participants keep saying we've created for them, or we have created an environment for them to access it within themselves. So I love y'all endlessly and completely. Stop waiting for the changes. Stop consuming only the free content. I know you're telling yourself it's all you can afford and all those things. I did that too. And until I made the commitment, I just stayed in the same hamster wheel. And then as soon as there was an emergency and I needed to come up with $1,000 for tires or engine or something, I'd figure it out. You know how many times I've cleaned toilets? Do you know how many houses I've cleaned so that I could go to something and finally change my life? It's a commitment. I was getting paid to clean toilets for $50 a day at one point. Not a whole day, but I only could make 50 in a day. So, how bad do you want it? How much are you done? Are you ready for different? I love y'all so much. Be easy, be free. I'm going to jump over into the Q&A session inside the membership portal. If you want to come into the membership portal, you can go to masterclassmondays.com, join the masterclass. It gives you all of these classes, plus the downloads, plus the information and all of the old recordings for 25 bucks a month. Killer deal. And I think it's like 200 for the year. Like it's stupid. Anyway, it's not stupid. It's incredible. I love you. Be easy, be free. I pretty much went a whole hour with this extra rant at the end. I have frameworks and things in place, and I do what I want. You know what I'm saying? I love y'all. Until next time, I love you. Be free on my Facebook fam, and I'm going to go hang out in the Zoom room. Peace.